So, Joseph is in prison. Yay! But the Lord is with him. Alright, so sometime later when he's in prison, the cupbearer and the baker really ticked off the king, and the king threw him in prison. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in the custody of the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended to them. So, Joseph's in charge of these two guys. After they had been in his custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker, had a dream. When Joseph came in to them, he saw that they were dejected. Alright, they're like super sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, "Why are your faces so sad today?" And they said, "We had a dream, and each dream has a meaning of its own, but there is no one to interpret them." There's no one to interpret our dreams. Okay, so they're used to being in the palace, and there's all these guys that are really smart that know everything, and they could probably normally just ask one of them, but now they're in prison, so they can't ask anybody. So they're like, "There's no one here to interpret our dream. We've had this dream, and there's no one to interpret it." So Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded and blossomed and its clusters ripened into grapes, Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." This is what it means," Joseph said to him. 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand again, just as you used to when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison, for I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put into a dungeon. So, hey man, I don't belong here. Help me out. When you get back to Pharaoh, help me out. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, I had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top baskets were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the baskets on my head. This is what it means," Joseph said. 3 days. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh. Now, the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for his officials. He lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of the officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief cupbearer, just as Joseph had said to them in the interpretation. So, the cupbearer went to Pharaoh right away and said, "Hey, there's this guy, gave me an interpretation of a dream. He's in a lot of trouble. He totally doesn't belong to be there, so please help him out." And Pharaoh went and he took care of it, and Joseph got out of jail. Right? Wrong. When 2 full years had passed, 2 full years, Joseph just waiting in jail for being good, for not sleeping with a crazy woman, for being pure, for doing what was right, got put in jail. For 2 full years, he was standing. Pharaoh had a dream. after 2 full years. Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came 7 cows, sleek and fat. Sleek means like super awesome looking. They were super awesome looking, like really awesome skin and shiny and handsome, I guess, for a cow. And they were fat. And they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows who were ugly and gaunt. So ugly. I don't know, their fur was all mangled and mangy and bugs all in it and matted and never combed. And gaunt is the absolute opposite of fat. They were super skinny. That's gaunt. It's when your eyeballs sink in and your cheeks sink in and you see your skeleton really good. That's what gaunt is. After then, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile, stood beside the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again. He had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing in a single stalk. After then, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. So just imagine a super wilted, gross-looking plant like this, like all dead, like shriveled up, and then an amazing, green, beautiful, luscious plant. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. In the morning, his mind was troubled. He sent for all the magicians, wise men, and no one was able to give him the interpretation. Then, after 2 years, the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Oh, today I am reminded of my shortcoming. Pharaoh was once angry with me, and I was imprisoned, and along with the baker, each of us had a dream. There's a young Hebrew guy there. He gave us the interpretations of our dream. Each dream came true. Each interpretation came true, just exactly like he interpreted it in. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. He shaved and changed his clothes, and brought before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one's able to interpret it. But I have heard it said that that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." And I love what Joseph does. Instead of seeing this as his ticket out, like, yeah, you better believe it right here, man. Get me out of jail and I'm the man. He doesn't do that. Immediately he says, "I cannot do it." Right there. Chapter 41, verse 16. "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh. "But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Then when Pharaoh said to Joseph, he gave him the dream. He added a couple of things. I guess he'd forgotten in the first dream. He said, "In my dream I was standing on the bank, and there came out the fat and sleek cows. They grazed among the reeds. Then the 7 gaunt and ugly cows, scrawny and very ugly," is what it says. Scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. That's what it says. "I have never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before." Then I woke up. In my dream I saw the 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing, and then the thin heads swallowed up the 7 heads. I told the musicians, but no one can explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, there you go. The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years. The 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. All right? It is one and the same. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after are 7 years. And the 7 worthless heads of scorched grain are 7 years. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt. But 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance of Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in two forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God. So then he said, "Let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man to put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land. Take a fifth, which is 20%, of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food from the good years that are coming and store it up, the grain, under the authority of Pharaoh, to keep the cities for food. This food should be held to reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined during the famine." The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials, so Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, in whom the Spirit of the Lord is, in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people and are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So, God was with Joseph in slavery, in prison. He was made the head, and now, after all that time, he was made second in command. Only Pharaoh was more important than him. Alright, so God had a plan. God used it for good. He lined Joseph up, had him in the right spot at the right time, Potiphar's house, so that he could get thrown with a crazy woman, so that he could get thrown into prison. And in prison, so that he could see the cupbearer and interpret his dream. Right? All of it all lined up. Just special, so that Joseph could go to Egypt, go to Pharaoh, and save all of Egypt. And eventually he's going to end up saving his own family because he saves Egypt. So, love you guys. Good night.